Just as Morehouse has taught you to expect more of yourselves, inspire those who look up to you to expect more of themselves. We know that too many young men in our community continue to make bad choices. And I have to say, growing up, I made quite a few myself. Sometimes I wrote off my own failings as just another example of the world trying to keep a black man down. I had a tendency sometimes to make excuses for me not doing the right thing. But one of the things that all of you have learned over the last 4 years is there's no longer any room for excuses. I understand there's a common fraternity creed here at Morehouse. Excuses are tools of the incompetent used to build bridges to nowhere and monuments of nothingness. Well, we've got no time for excuses. Not because the bitter legacy of slavery and segregation have vanished entirely, they have not. Not because racism and discrimination no longer exist. We know those are still out there. It's just that in today's hyper-connected, hyper-competitive world with millions of young people from China and India and Brazil, many of whom started with a whole lot less than all of you did, all of them entering the global workforce alongside you, nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. And moreover, you have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too. You now hail from a lineage and legacy of immeasurably strong men. Men who bore tremendous burdens and still laid the stones for the path on which we now walk. You wear the mantle of Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington and Ralph Bunche and Langston Hughes and George Washington Carver and Ralph Abernathy and Thurgood Marshall and yes, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. These men were many things to many people, and they knew full well the role that racism played in their lives. But when it came to their own accomplishments and sense of purpose, they had no time for excuses.
All right, everybody, welcome to Studio B. I am your host, Pastor MDH. Thank you so very much for joining us here on the set. Again, we are so thankful that you continue to join in with us every single week as new episodes are continuing to drop. Today, I'm going to continue to go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to continue to speak truth to error from my point of view and use factual data to back up my opinions and my stances. I want to ask a question today, and that question is America a racist nation? Is America a racist nation? This topic is sure to ruffle some feathers and cause some sharp disagreements. And as I talk about this subject, it's almost taboo, but make no mistake about it. You can't live in these United States in the 2021 year by which we reside and not have to confront this particular issue and or topic. Is America racist? From the news headlines to social medias to movie stars and personalities and seemingly all asserting that in America 2021 is as racist as it's ever been. And even more to a degree, it is even more racist than it has ever been. Talking about even going back to 1619, 1863, Jim Crow, Black Wall Street, all of those things on the American landscape. There are those that ascribe that America, the United States of America in 2021 is worse off now than it was in 1619, 1863, Jim Crow era, Black Wall Street, etc. There are those that propagate that America is regressing in its racial progress. But I have a question for you. Does the data, not the feelings, does the data support that? Does the data that's available to anyone that wants to do the work, does it support the notion that America is as racist as it has ever been, and even more to the degree, more racist than it's ever been? Does the data, black, white, brown, whatever, does the data support such claims? And let me tell you unequivocally, if you have fingers and a brain and access to internet, absolutely not. If you can do your fingers like this and type on a keyboard, or even go to a local library, old school, absolutely not that America is more racist now in 2021 than it has been in its history. It is not only absurd, it is ludicrous, because the data from whatever source that you want to pull will absolutely destroy the myth that America is more racist in 2021 than it was in 1619, 1863, and the Jim Crow era. Segregated South. The data does not support that. I am not talking about the media narrative. I am not talking about what people say. I'm talking about the facts, the data that is accessible to any and all who want to do the research and be well informed on the issue. As I have stated many times before, we still need to have serious conversations around particular issues that are going on within the walls of these United States. We need to have conversations about prison reform. We need to have conversation about economic reform, educational reform, redlining. We need to have conversations around specific issues that still show systematic racism. To be sure, there is still racism in America. I don't think anybody, well, at least within my circle, that would even remotely deny that there are still some racist overtures operating within the framework of America, from the top levels all the way down. But the idea, the absurdity of the idea that we in 2021 are more racist as a nation than we were in its founding history is absolutely ridiculous. And it is a plot. It is a tool to start a race war, a civil war, where the ones on the bottom will be doing all of the fighting and the ones on top will be reaping the benefits. It is a clear tactic that you can look all the way back in the channels of history and discover the same tactics being used in 2021 as has been used in America's history. Does the data, the non-biased data, not black data, not white data, support the claim that America has reverted back to its old racist ways and is trying to reinstate Jim Crow segregation laws, repeal voting rights legislation, and overtly and covertly oppress and systematically crush people of color and minorities? I'm going to give you, now watch this, I'm going to give you some data. I'm going to give you data. And some would even say, as we are discussing this issue in 2021, why do we have to go back to these particular talking points to prove to people that the claims that are being thrown against the wall in every which direction is meant for a purpose other than what they are stating? the data, the facts, not the feelings, but the data does not suggest that. And not only not suggest that, it absolutely refutes it. And I'll show you a couple things here as we are going throughout this podcast. If America and its racist overtones are dominating the landscape of 2021, and we have not progressed from our transgressions of the past, the sins of America, or what is typically called the original sin of America, which is slavery, and we have not progressed past those points in 2021, we're in a world of trouble. Yeah, it's Chicken Little, the sky is falling. But the data does not support that. What has changed? I'm going to talk about a couple of things here that I think many people, and I mean this very serious. I mean this very humbly, but yet very forcefully. I just think many people don't know the issues. Many people just simply get their talking points from Twitter, from YouTube, from Facebook, and news headlines. The clickbait. That's where many people get their information. And so the hard work, the extra mile that you have to go to get to the meat of the story, people don't want to do. Talking about what it looks like as we examine America. What has changed in America? In 1960, 68% of Americans said that they would never vote for a black man. In 1960, 68% of Americans said that they would never vote for a black man. And if you look at 1968 and you look at the House of Representatives, you look at the Senate, you definitely look at the presidency and look at all the cabinet therein, there is a very limited specks of pepper on that white pile of salt. In 1960, 68% of Americans said they would never, and I underscore never, vote for a black man. 50 years later, the 44th president of the United States, one Barack Hussein Obama, was elected president in 2008. A black man. Not just any black man. A black man that has roots in Kenya. A black man that came from Chicago. A black man that had a troubled history and past with his father. A black man that had a history of drug use. 50 years after the 1960 poll, where 68% of Americans said there is no way on God's green earth that I will ever vote for a black man, voted a black man not just into office, but into the highest office in the land. 50 years later, America put a black man as the most powerful man on the planet. Make no mistake about it. If every single black person and their children went out and voted for Barack Obama, he still would have not had enough votes to win the presidency. Barack Obama in 2008 won the presidency of the United States by the white vote. That's how he got into office. He got into office, yes, because black people were extremely proud. It was almost 50 years to the day that Martin Luther King did the March on Washington. And here we are getting ready to inaugurate a black man as the 44th president of these United States of America. There was heritage, there was history, there was a proud moment for African Americans. And many, I would say 99.9% of all black people went out and voted for Barack Obama, if nothing else but for the history. But even with that being the case, Barack Obama assumed 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue because of the white vote. 50 years after 68% of Americans said that they would never vote for a black man. if that's not the progress by which we can hang hats on, now watch what I'm saying here. If that's not the progress by which we can say, wow, that's a difference. To allow a black man not into the halls of Senate or not into the halls of the House of Representatives, but to put him in the very seat of government, to literally and figuratively give a black man the nuclear code. That's what America did in 2008. They elected a black man, Barack Obama, to the presidency. Now, if that's not enough, in 2012, this same Barack Obama ran for re-election. And in 2012, he got elected to a second term of presidency in 2012. So America from 1960, there was 68%, that's almost 2/3 of the American public, said they would never, ever, 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 ever vote for a black man. 50 years later, they vote a black man into the presidency of the United States. And 4 years later, they re-elect him as president. Again, not by every black vote, even though every black person, not figuratively, voted for Barack Obama. He got elected again by the majority white vote. So an overwhelmingly percentage of white voters in America voted for a black man to assume the highest office in the land and be the most powerful person on the planet, not once, but twice. Gave him the keys to the government and said, we trust your leadership. That was 50 years to the day, almost to the day. If that's not an example of obvious racial progress, then I don't know what is. Yes, America can throw you some carrots and throw you some things that will, pacify you for the moment, but they're not going to give you the presidency. The presidency? I'm not talking about the president of a university or a president of a company. I'm talking about the president of America, the executive branch. 50 years after America said, no way, no how, and hell is going to have to freeze over before I vote for a black man, they voted a black man into office at the highest level twice. Let's take interracial marriages. As William H. Fry of the Brooklyn Institute wrote, sociologists have traditionally viewed multiracial marriage as the benchmark for the ultimate stage of assimilation of a particular group into society. It was all the way up until 1967 that 16 states in the United States of America legally prohibited black and white marriages. So up until 1967, there were 16 states in the United States that had laws on the books prohibiting black and white marriages. And in 1958, a Gallup poll found that 4% of Americans approved of black and white marriages. 4% in 1958. 4% of Americans approved of black or white or interracial marriages in 1958. Let's let that number sit on you before I give you the number in 2019, which is the most recent data that we have. In 1958, 4% of Americans said black people marrying white people and white people marrying black people is absolutely it goes against everything I know. In 1958, 4% of Americans said it's okay. 96% of America said it's unacceptable for a black man to marry a white woman and a white person to marry a black person. It is absolutely unacceptable. 1958, 4% of Americans approved. In 2019, that number is up to 91%. In 2019, 91% of Americans say it's okay, it's acceptable for a black person to marry a white person and a white person to marry a black person. From 4% in 1958 that approved, 96 disapproved, to now 91% 98% of Americans say there's nothing wrong with interracial marriages. All you got to do is sit in your living room and look at commercials now. Interracial marriages are par for the course. It's normal. It's normative now. The restrictions that were once on the books, even legally, in 1967 was 16 states said it is illegal for blacks and whites to marry. Now the number is 91% that say no big deal. Racial progress. Is America going to be a utopia? No. Is America ever going to be colorblind? No. It's never going to be colorblind because you're going to be dealing with people. But the lunacy that is overtaking people right now with the idea that America has reverted back to the Jim Crow segregation and the pre-Civil War and the pre-1863 Emancipation Proclamation is absolutely ridiculous. While we have not and will not be able to skip down the yellow brick road and sing Kumbaya, there is this mass appeal to undermine the progress that has been made in these United States. Well, some are going to say, oh, what about police interactions with blacks? That's definitely racist. I mean, doesn't that prove that racism is still not just in America, but very prevalent? I mean, look at the police interactions and the police killings of black or brown people of color. In 2014, Ferguson, Missouri became ground zero when a white policeman shot an unarmed black teenager, Michael Brown. Hands up, y'all remember that. The Department of Justice, headed by a black man, Eric Holder, under the direction of a black president, Barack Obama, launched an investigation into the matter and cleared the officer of any wrongdoing. But watch this. In the same findings, they found that the police department in Ferguson, Missouri, practiced racial bias. So they said that the police department in Ferguson, Missouri, although the officer that shot Michael Brown, they found him to have not committed any wrongdoing. The federal investigation further said this, that the police department of Ferguson, Missouri practices racial bias. And here's where they get that from. The findings go out to point out that the percentage of blacks living in Ferguson, which is about 67%, accounted for almost 85% of the police traffic stops, an 18% percentage gap. Of course, that's racism, right? Well, if you look at New York City is made up of 26% population of blacks, but yet they account for 55% of the traffic stops, a 30% percentage point. By that same moniker, the NYPD should be practicing racial bias, even though the NYPD has a 3-to-1 minority to white cop ratio. For every white cop in New York City, there are 3 minorities. In Atlanta, Georgia, the hot seat of the Deep South, 69% of the police force is minority. 69% is minority. So if these numbers are correct and police are systematically targeting people of color and they are practicing institutional racism, then the problem is not just relegated to Ferguson, Missouri. It should be broad stroked all across the nation. But I want to show you some things about how to properly understand this context. Because when you see those numbers without context, many are going to cut off the podcast right now and say, see, racism. See, black cops are hunting down black people. Let me ask you a question. In order to have an honest conversation about police conduct, now here's a courageous conversation that I'm willing to have and take my hits about it. We also got to have a courageous conversation about black crime. Blacks make up about 14% of the population here in the United States. 14%. But yet, blacks make up 50% of the nation's homicides. We make up 14% of the population, roughly around about 45 million or so, but yet we make up 50% of the nation's homicide. In 2012, the CDC said that police killed 123 blacks, while in that same year, they killed 278 whites. So police interaction with civilians, they killed twice as many whites as they did blacks. But the CDC reports in that same year that in the same year, while 123 black people were killed by cops, 6,000 black homicides happened in that same year. 6,000 homicides committed by African Americans happened in the exact same year that 123 were killed by the cops. So, and I've said this, and I will continue to say this, two things can be true at the same time. Two things can hold equal value and deserve equal attention. We can talk about police misconduct, police brutality. We can talk about systematic racism that exists in police departments, and they still do to this day. But we can also have a conversation about blacks, the same group right now that are talking about that we are overly oppressed and repressed, and they're taking everything away from us, and this world is doing us bad and keeping us, all that stuff right there, committed 6,000 homicides. And out of the 6,000 homicides, 4,900 of them were black. That's black on black. That means a black person went out there and killed another black person. But the idea is that we got to focus on this 123 because this 123 number is unacceptable. And we pay no attention to the 6,000 number. We pay no attention to 4,900 blacks killed other blacks. But all the attention has got to go to this 123. And my point of view is we have to talk about the 123 and develop those things on a case-by-case basis. Let's find out what's going on in those 123 and have some real dialogue about them. But everybody, don't sweep 6,000 murders under the rug. Like, what are you talking about? We have made as unfortunate as the murder, and it was a murder of George Floyd by Derek Chauvin. Yes, it was a murder. It was absolutely egregious to anybody that's got eyes and a heart. But now we have encapsulated, we have enshrined, we have memorialized a man by the name of George Floyd for the heinous act that was committed unto him and broad stroke that across the black community. And now that is our rallying cry. When we say nothing about Michael Cooper in California, who was snuffed out after having 6 offers from Ivy League colleges and scholarships going off, but yet got murdered by gang violence. His name is not in the wind. He is not memorialized by any bronze statues anywhere. There's no anti-violence bill in his name. Why? Because he got killed by another black person. But his life means nothing. We don't rally around that. And the idea, now listen, history is replete. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, there's nothing new under the sun. I'm going to talk about Jim Crow and the origins of Jim Crow so that you can understand how this thing came about. But we would be remiss not to talk about the Jim Crow era and how that played out in police departments all throughout the South, and even started trickling up to the North and even to the West to some degree. Okay, we can have some real conversations about police brutality and how the police treated people of color. Like, those are real conversations that we need to have. But as we have those real conversations about real issues, why in the world would we not talk about the issues that are more proportionately affecting our communities? If the idea is correct that America has reverted back to its most racist years, and we are as oppressive and repressive as we've ever been, then there's a whole lot of people that's got a whole lot of explaining to do. Is there still racism in America? Absolutely. Nobody's going to deny that. We're never going to be a nation that is colorblind. But as the liberal arts sociologist Orlando Peterson from Harvard University writes, America is now the least racist white majority in the world. It has a better record of legal representation of minorities, white, black, or indifferent. It offers a greater number of opportunities to black than any other society in the world, and that's including all of Africa. And by the way, Orlando Patterson from Harvard University is a black man. Now, I don't understand the premise of these hyperboles, as Condoleezza Rice just recently said in the interview that she was on last week. She talked about growing up in Jim Crow South Alabama, and her interviewer asked her about the racial conflict in America, in which she cut the interviewer off abruptly and said, listen, I grew up in Jim Crow, Alabama. I went on to be the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor. I graduated with a master's, PhD. I've assimilated to the highest levels of government. And in case you don't know who Condoleezza Rice is, she was directly involved in many regards. People would say she had a direct hand in the disassimilation of the USSR under George Bush Sr. That black woman stopped the interviewer head on and said, hold on, things ain't perfect, but don't you dare compare this modern day America to the Jim Crow South. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. So what does the numbers say? What do the numbers say? You can go to blackdemographics.com if you want to pull this stuff up, or you can go to the Census Bureau and pull this stuff up. This information is all over everywhere and readily accessible to all. I've said this particular one that always strikes out to me as a very, very disturbing fact. In 1960, let me make sure I'm right here. In 1960, the single family rate in America, in African Americans in 1960, was 21%. Now, remember, 1960, that's before civil rights legislation, that's before the voting rights, that's before all of that legislation. Okay, Jim Crow is official. It is in practice. There's not an covert discrimination of black people. There is overt, like it's in your face. It's in your face. This is 1960. We have 21% of American households in 1960 that were raised by single parent homes. 1960. In the middle of Jim Crow, in the middle of segregated South, in the middle of rights being violated, we had 21% of African American families that were headed by single mothers. In 2018, which is the most recent data that we can find, that number, which was 21% in 1960, is now 74% in 2018. Now, it's 74% post Jim Crow era, 74% post civil rights legislation, is 74% post voting rights legislation. Post. After the freedoms of black people were given, 21% before the freedoms were given, 74% after the freedoms were given. The numbers, and there's a whole book in the Bible called Numbers, y'all, so numbers matter, is diametrically opposed to the concept that is in the land right now. And listen, what has happened in America in the last decade is America has been trending and teetering on this precipice. If you look at America in all of its glory and what it offers to the individual, regardless of creed, race, regardless of where you were born, regardless of your even sexual orientation, America offers you the greatest opportunity. It was in 2018 that America stopped trade practices with Saudi countries that were still executing LGBT people. America said, we will no longer engage in trade and or commerce with you as long as you are executing LGBT, people that come out in their sexual orientation. America stood up for those rights of the LGBT in other countries to get those heads of state to enact policies to protect those people in their countries. It's amazing that we talk about this in America, about being a socially repressive society, but yet we say nothing and there is no talk about what's being done in China right now against Black Americans or Black people or people with black skin. Nothing is being said because China is a communist country. Look at what's going on right now in China with people with black and brown skin. Look how they are being denied overt access to certain things simply because they have brown skin. What's going on right now? Look at the religious oppression that is going on in China right now, where churches have to have underground churches, lest if they get caught preaching and teaching from the word of God, they will be imprisoned. But you know why nothing is said about that? It's because so much stuff from China comes to America. There is literally a case to be made that America's economy is directly tied to China. The atrocities that are going on right now in China, the human rights violations that are going on right now in China, you hear nothing about. And you have migrants from China. If you look at the world news, you'll see that in 2021, just 2021, 14,000 immigrants from China have tried to migrate into the States using political asylum because of the repressive regime that is China. And yet, we here in America in 2021, with all that is afforded to us, have the audacity to say that America is the most racist land on the planet and that we are reverting back to our racist principles. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, let me make you mad, because here's these two things that we need to talk about. Last year, and for the last 4 years, starting in 2016 all the way up until the presidential elections of 2020, everybody said that Trump was the devil. This man is the epitome of racism. His rhetoric, his dog whistle is bringing all of the white nationalists out of the closet. He's bringing back racism to the forefront of America. He's trying to revert America back to its racist past. That he's a xenophobe, he's a homophobe, he's a racist, he hates black people, he hates Mexicans, he hates everybody that is not lily white. That was the narrative from 2016 all the way up until November the 4th of 2020. But yet, 81 million people voted for a man that has clear voting rights against black people? 81 million. Put a man in office who did the eulogy of the grand cyclops and the exalted cyclops of the KKK. His mentor was his mentor by which he has derived his political ideology was the exalted cyclops of the KKK. That man, African Americans went out and put in the very seat of government. And yet, want to talk about America is racist. Now, if you don't believe me, use these things that God has given you, 5 on this hand, 5 on this hand, type it in. And I'm not even talking about the 1994 crime bill. Forget all that. Forget all that. Let's talk about when he voted against segregation. Brown versus the Board of Education. How about that? And yet we are sitting here now in 2021 where we have the most diverse Congress ever in the history of the United States, the 200-year plus history of the United States. It is the most diverse Congress we've ever had. There's a woman by the name of Ilhan Omar, who is a representative in Minnesota, who is a Somali refugee that came over here to the United States of America, fleeing Somalia, and got voted into the House of Representatives. AOC, which is a representative up in New York, is a Hispanic. She has Hispanic heritage, who was a waitress. Got voted into the House of Representatives and represents the District of New York, and by all stretches is one of the most powerful members of the House of Representatives. A Hispanic lady that was a waitress is now in the top seats of government. If the system is the system, and the system is designed to hold you back, at one point in America's history it was. But as I said before, the system is crumbling beneath itself. The system cannot withstand letting the people in that it's trying to hold back. It can't withstand that. If the system is trying to repress black people, brown people, and people of color, then it cannot allow the people of color to get into the places where the policies are made. It can't allow that to happen. If it allows that to happen, then the system begins to crumble on itself. And in order for the system to remain the system has to keep the same people in power that created the system. Well, it's not. The system is now matriculating to the demographic of the nation by which it serves. There are people right now in the halls of Congress, in the House of Representatives, that look like the people that they are representing. Now, as we go back and look at how this looks like on the American landscape, as we channel this back through history, continually say, even ad nauseum, America's not going to be colorblind. No, it's not. No, it's not. Everybody, if you're listening, watching, wherever you may be, there might be an opportunity for you to get engaged by somebody that don't like you, and don't like you because of your color. They may not like you because of your religious affiliation. They may not like you because of your sexual orientation. You may encounter people like that in 2021. And I can guarantee that those people are out there. I can guarantee you that there's some people out there that don't like you just because of X. And if within their power, will try to keep you from doing certain things because they don't like you because of X. Those people are out there. But the idea that you and me are systematically held back from opportunity and success because the system is holding me back and the system is overtly racist to me, is a misnomer, and the data don't bear it out. And I tell you guys that if you notice, the very people that keep telling you you can't succeed have succeeded. The very people that keep telling you the system is holding you back have beat the system. The people that keep telling you to look over your back have armed bodyguards that are protecting them. Why? Because fear sells. So when a guy like Marcus D. Holman comes on and says, man, foot on that. Yes, are there going to be some bad times in your life? Absolutely. But if you know anybody that's over 70, talk to them. Don't talk to nobody that's 20. You're talking to a person that's 20, they were born in the 2000s. They were born in the internet era. Talk to somebody who's 60, 70, and praise God if you got somebody in your life that's 80 plus. Talk to that person about the former America. Talk to that person and then come back and get at me. But you're having conversations with people that are 20 and 30 years old about how bad America is when you've been born in the age of do it how you want. When you've been born in the age of nobody can tell you what to do. When you've been born in the age that everything is at your fingertips. The World Wide Web is literally at your fingertips. You've been born into that era. And if you're born into that era, you have absolutely no idea of what America was and the experiences thereof. So what I like to do is I like to talk to people who are much older than me. I like to talk to people who got some season on them that can walk with me through some things. See, I can have points of views about police officers because I talk to police officers. I know them. So I get the experience from their point of view, and I get the experience from the other's point of view. I know this because I talk to people, and I got people in my life that are 70, 80, and the oldest person that I have in my life is 89. Well in the area of Jim Crow. And so if you're sitting around the table talking to your friends who have all graduated college and they're sitting there talking about how hard it is and how they can't get ahead, man, foolishness. Go pull up somebody that done went through that. And now they're on the other side of this. As my grandmother, to which I often avail, who never owned her own home, went on to be with the Lord 3 years ago, coming up this December, but was able to see her kids graduate college. Her kids go to graduate school. Her kids own homes. Her kids own businesses. Didn't stop there. She saw her grandkids owning homes. She saw her grandkids getting college educations. She saw her grandkids getting businesses. This is a woman that was a waitress and a dishwasher for the majority of her life, and grew up in the time where there was literally a sign that said white water fountain, black water fountain. If you want food from this restaurant, you need to go around the back and pick it up. This is the wisdom by which we need to sit under. Because if you're sitting in 2021 in America and you're typically watching me right now on $1,000 smart device, you're scrolling the internet at ease, being able to pick up information from all these different sources, and yet you have the audacity to talk about that you are repressed and oppressed? Man, come on. Come on, man. Come on, man. Now, are we skipping down the yellow brick road? No. But are you talking about you are repressed by the system? Can I tell you something? As a black man, I'll be 48 years old next month, should the Lord spare my life. Can I tell you something? I've been to jail one time. And it wasn't jail, it was county jail. I got caught stealing from Target. and went down to the unit off of Derry Ashford and Highway 6. My mom had to come and pick me up. I got took to jail because I was stealing. I wasn't, in Target, and the cop was behind me and he was following me around the store, and he said, "There go a black guy, and man, I got to follow this black guy around the store because he's black." I stole a bike chain and I got caught, and I had to go down to the juvenile detention. My mom had to come and pick me up. When I was down there on Derry Ashford and Highway 6, I remember this like it was yesterday. That door slammed. I can still hear that noise in my ear right now. When I heard that door slam, it was a moment that I will never forget. Can I tell you something? I'm 48 years old. I've never been to prison. I've never been to jail again. Ever. I've been black all my life. I got that one experience, and I was down there for maybe 2.5, 3 hours. I got that one experience of sitting in that cold cell and having to be alone with nothing but my thoughts. And I said to myself, this is not a place that I want to be. Therefore, I'm not going to do the actions that I did to land me in this place again, because that was not a place that I wanted myself to be. So I stopped doing the action that landed me in the jail, because I didn't want to be in jail. In 48 years, I've never been jacked up by a policeman. I've never had a racist interaction with a policeman. In 48 years. I've never been pulled out of the car and jacked up on the hood of the car by a white racist cop or a racist cop in general. I've never had that happen to me. I was born in 1973, so I'm almost 10 years removed from the legislation that was starting to get black people out of this dark place that they were in. I've never experienced that. Now watch this. I know people that have. I can talk to my grandmother. I can talk to my mom, who's 63 years old. I can talk to her, and I can hear some stories. I can hear some stories. I can hear some stories about overt racism. I ain't trying to be undercover with it. I ain't trying to be politically correct about it. This is what it is. That's the era that they come from. And as we look at the American landscape, as we look at what's going on in America right now, black people, you are being lied to. You can do whatever you want to do. You can be successful. You can raise a family. You can start a business. You can run for office. You can do whatever you want to do here in America. Will it be hard? More than likely, yes. Will there be some obstacles that are placed in your path on your way to achieving that success? Yes. As we looked at the inauguration of Barack Obama in 2008, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. I want you to go back and YouTube the inauguration of Barack Obama. And I want you to listen to the speech about change, and change has come to America, and what Martin Luther King Jr. started 50 years before has now come to fruition here on this inauguration day. I want you to go back and listen to it. And look at white people, black people, Hispanic people, Chinese people, all in that crowd crying tears of joy because the fulfillment of the ideals of America is now coming to pass. Not that it's a perfect union, but it's a more perfect union. On that day, it was realized. Now, I've had the pleasure and distinction of visiting Barack Obama's grandmother, Sarah Obama, in Kenya, where his daddy is buried. The red dirt. I visited that place. So from Kenya to America to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But yet, the idea is that because you're black, because you're brown, because you are LGBT, because you are of a different affiliation other than a hegemonic white person in America, then you are systematically oppressed, repressed, held down, and can't do nothing, is ridiculous. And if you're buying into that, then that's your bad. If you're buying into that foolishness, that's your bad. Do we have work to do? Yes, man. And watch this. We're doing some work. Everybody, we're doing some work. We're in the circles where we are negotiating the change that we want to see happen. We are in places with people that can affect policy and implement change. We are having the conversations that need to be had in order to get the progress that everybody say that they want to have. But the idea, everybody, that we continually play into this narrative is ridiculous. And to those who are born again and those who have the Holy Spirit of God residing on the inside of us, the Bible has a lot to say about racism. The Bible does not hide the sin of racism. It has a lot to say about it. It has a lot to say about it. And make no mistake about it, God is for justice. But God is for justice, whether you're black, white, brown. It does not make a difference of your ethnicity. It does not make a difference of your culture, where you come from. It does not make a difference to your orientation. God is a God of justice. He's a God of justice. And wherever justice needs to be seen, that's where God stands. See, what has happened is on the side of the white church, the white church has embraced nationalism as its idol. The black church, we have embraced our culture as our idol. And so now you have the white church and the black church, and you have God in between, and both think they're doing a service unto God by holding uncompromisingly to their principles. But what we don't realize is that the principles or the idol that we are holding on to is actually the God in which we're serving, the nationalist God and the cultural God. When what we should do if we're serving a God who is one, is understand that God is on the side of justice. Regardless if you're black, white, or indifferent, God stands on the side of justice. Wherever justice needs to be served, that's where God is. God is not a preferential God. So he does not lend preference to one side or the other. And we've missed that. Because we are continually pushing this narrative that does not bring the best out of people. This narrative does not bring the greatest potential out of people. Try this. Try empowering people. Try walking alongside of them through whatever obstacle they may be facing. Try encouraging them through the darkest valleys of their lives. Try encouraging them, because watch this narrative does not produce the kind of people that are going to be beneficial for society. We have to be able to walk with people through the darkest valleys of life. And what we need to do instead of promoting this narrative is point to examples. And let me just say this and I'm done. I have so many people around me in my immediate circle. So many people around me in my immediate circle that from A to Z have overcome whatever you want to say, whatever problem you want to put from A to Z. I personally know somebody that has overcome it. Rape, incest, racism, sexism, whatever ism, whatever problem from A to Z. Seriously, name it. Grew up in the hood. Mother was raped. They are the product of that rape. Dad wasn't in the house. 5 of them had to sleep in 1-bedroom apartment. We ate beans and rice every single, name it. I got somebody that I can put my hands on that can tell me about that story. And that same person who can tell me that story can also tell me their success story of how they did not allow that to define them. I got people all around me like that. I got people all around me that are continually knocking down the walls, knocking down barriers, moving past what people say that they can't do. I got people like that all around me. That's my circle. That's my circle. We have people that go past the nose and you can't. We have people that believe in the God-given ability that he has placed on the inside of us. And so I reason from that perspective. And I reason from the perspective of, listen, you can do it. Stop allowing people to tell you what you can't do. It's not a spiritual pie in the sky. It's not some pipe dream. It's not some preachery talk. You literally can do whatever you are aspiring to do. If you want to own a business, let's get it done. If you want to go back to school, let's get it done. If you want to own a house, let's get it done. If you want to be financially free, let's get it done. If you want to change the dynamic and the trajectory of your family, let's get it done. You came from nothing, you can work to something. Let's get it done. Because if we don't, this narrative will play out against us. And I believe all you got to do is, while America may not be the best place on the planet, it is not by far the only democracy on the planet. It is not the only sovereign nation on the planet. There are 200 other sovereign nations on the planet. But there's a reason why people are flocking here in droves and not flocking to Canada. And they're not flocking to England. They're not flocking to Germany. They're not flocking to Africa. They're not flocking to India. They're not flocking to any of those places. Mexico. They're not doing that because they understand there's a very unique opportunity here in America. That no matter where you're born, no matter where you're at, you can make something of yourself. You can do something great no matter where you have been planted. People from other nations understand that, but the people in America don't. It's a sad case when immigrants understand the benefits and the opportunities of this country more than the citizens of this country. It's a sad case when naturalized citizens are bursting in tears when they become official U.S. citizens, and yet the U.S. citizens that were born here hate the very existence of the nation that they live in. I think that's crazy. I think it's absolutely crazy. America is not a perfect union, but it is a more perfect union than it was in 1619, than it was in 1863, than it was during the Jim Crow segregation South, than it was in those times in which my grandmother, your grandmother, our grandfathers lived in. Because make no mistake about it, no matter how bad you think you got it right now, it pales in comparison to what your forefathers went through. I don't know anybody that has been beaten with lashes on their back and still had to get up the next morning and tend to the business of the master. I want to encourage you, man. This is something that is not just a social issue for me. It's a deeper spiritual issue because I believe that it is being targeted and used to cripple the potential that God has placed on the inside of us. Do we have a long way to go, everybody? Yes, we do. We do. We're not there yet, and until you get to heaven, things on this side are not going to be perfect. So I've kind of relegated myself to that fact that until I get to glory, the stuff before glory is still going to have its challenges. However, I live to live my life to make people that have paved this way for me proud. My grandmother, my mother, my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, seeing what they went through, our debt to them to do better, to make sure that the generation following me has more opportunity than I experienced. And that's what I'm hell-bent on doing. We're going to tear down some walls, y'all. We're going to break down barriers. You can tell me no if you want to. That's within your right to tell me no. You got the right to say whatever you want. But if it's in my heart to do and God has called me to do it, then we're going to push past all of the no's until we get to the yes. So is America more racist now than it has ever been? Absolutely not, y'all. No. Do we still have work to do? Yes, and yes. So everybody, thank you for joining us here on the set of Studio B. Thank you for joining us. Remember, I want you to, if you enjoyed this podcast, I want you to like, follow, subscribe, comment. If you didn't like it, comment. If you want to put some things in the comment box, man, we welcome all of that. The interaction and engagement of the people that we talk to on a weekly basis, man, get in there. Let your thoughts be known. I want to hear from you. You can personally contact me, pastormdh@studiob.com. If you look to want to be a guest on the podcast, you think you got something valuable to offer, a different perspective, come on, shoot me an email, man. We'll sit down and talk about it, and then possibly set you up for a podcast right here at the set of Studio B. So everybody, we love you, man. Be empowered, be informed. Studio B.